As you probably know, Disneyland, the happiest place on earth, is hitting 70 years old officially this week, right, Michelle?
Yes, crazy to think about that, huh?
Yes.
Whew.
So, of course, celebrations have begun way back in May, but this is it. This is the official date, July 17th. Of course, Disneyland opened back in 1955, July
We
17th.
weren't even around.
We weren't even around. We were not even close to it. Um, but it was, it was spectacular. Although I guess that first day was a little glitchy, but they got through it. And now it is and still is the happiest place on earth, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, that really does capture the essence of that park, and I'm so excited today about what we're gonna be talking about.
Right. So we're going to be talking about this and maybe not the specifics for Disneyland so much as feelings. It's all about feelings. It's a very special Hyperion Adventures podcast as we look into how we feel about Walt's original park, Disneyland.
Yeah, and why we believe it's still like you said, it still is the happiest place on earth.
It definitely still is. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about celebrations, nostalgia, so much nostalgia, everything that touches our heart within this park. We're going to cover a lot of maybe the spirit behind Disneyland and the challenges that Walt went through to get this done. It was quite a risk he took, but he set the standard for theme parks everywhere. And yes, it made big uh, it was a historic moment for Disney, but yes, it was a historic moment for all these eventual companies that would open up amazing theme parks across the country.
Yeah, it's just amazing to think 70 years ago, this is what the foundation is of what we're experiencing in the world today.
Right. So much so. So it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. We're going to talk a lot about the park, the quaintness of it. Some people will say it's small. It's not. It's quaint. It's beautiful. Wonderful, as we always think. And we're going to talk about why it still attracts people to this park and what we feel about this park. Again, we're going to talk a lot about our feel. We're going to be very much in our feelings in this episode, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, and spoiler, it's really not the attractions, it's the pixie dust
Yes.
that makes it so wonderful for people still to this day.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk a lot about that. But let's go ahead and kick it off by hearing from Walt himself about kind of what he decided, how he decided to come up with the idea of
Yeah,
Disney.
they came about when my daughters were very young, and Saturday was always Daddy's Day with the two daughters. So we'd start out and try to go someplace with, different things, and I take them to the merry-go-round, and I took them different places, and as I'd sit there while they rode the merry-go-round, did all these things, sit on a bench, eating peanuts, I felt that there should be something built, some kind of an amusement enterprise built where that the parents and the children could have fun together. So that's how Disneyland started. Well, it took many years. It was a period of maybe 15 years developing. I started with many ideas, threw them away, started all over again, and eventually it evolved into what you see today as Disneyland. But it all started from a daddy with two daughters wondering where he could take them, where he could have a little fun with them, too.
So, as we heard, Walt created Disneyland as a place for kids and adults to have an amazing time, have fun together, something that was really lacking in our society to that point, Michelle.
Right, and that original intent, it still resonates today with the park, and even on opening day remarks, he talked about that, and even though we see, like, a shift in technology, new attractions, the core of storytelling and a place of joy for people of all ages does still exist, and that's still there. And I do want to point out if anybody wants to hear some more of the incredible story of, Walt's journey in building Disneyland and the real challenges, like you said, honey, of what he experienced, episode 245 in our Disney at 100 series. That one talks specifically about the decades. The 1940s into the 1950s when the park was actually opened.
Yeah. So,
So,
yeah, go back and listen to that episode. Go back and listen to all our episodes if you want to listen to them all. But we
yeah,
have some great
245.
Disneyland
Yes.
focused episodes for
Yeah.
sure that you'll want to hear.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, what does the park mean to people? What does it mean? What's it at heart? What does it mean to its guests? We're going to talk a little bit about tradition and legacy of this Disneyland park, right?
Right. And so that's kind of when we're going through why it's still attractive. One of those, first things that we can think about is that it is personal and shared legacies that guests have. Disneyland isn't just a theme park, it's a tradition that people pass down through the generations. You can have the experience of, for example, a grandparent with their first visit with their grandchild, or um, and when they're there thinking about when they were a child or their first visit, parents trying to recreate childhood memories of their own but share them with their kids. Even young adults going with friends to keep their kid like spirit alive is, one of those, again, traditions that keeps people attracted to the parks.
I think so many people grew up. I grew up going to Disneyland, grew up going with my family, my mother specifically, but many of my members of my family as well. And I just think that that's a huge part of it. There's so much to those memories of growing up and coming into this wonderful, amazing, spectacular place that's like nowhere else on earth. I mean, yes, now there are places that have mimicked
Right.
it, but it's so different, and it was definitely so different in its time when it first began from anything else anybody could experience on the planet.
Right, but like as you're saying, you had that experience passed down to you. You've passed that down to your son. I mean, it is one of those traditions that is a part of that park. Another thing that keeps people coming is that it's a significant part of personal stories. So that's where people celebrate special events like birthdays, engagements, graduations, reveal parties for, for baby sex. It's also a place for annual family vacations. A lot of times that's the big thing of the year, right? The family wants to go to Disneyland, or reunions. The other thing is that it is really a place where kids can celebrate becoming tall enough,
Yeah.
to get on an attraction. That's a major milestone for kids,
Which we're
so
still waiting for you to be able to become tall
I
enough for a
know,
lot of
right? I
attractions.
know.
Maybe this year. Maybe this year, sweetheart, when we get to Disneyland in January. Maybe this year you'll
I
finally get
know.
to ride that ride that you
I
have just
know.
not been quite there
I mean, there's some attractions that I wish I wasn't tall enough where I could use that as my excuse, but anyways. But, in summary, it's it's not just that going to Disneyland is a part of your whole life, it's that Disneyland has been a part of every major milestone for people.
Absolutely. People mark their timelines by their visits to Disneyland. It's making those core memories. It's all about that. And yes, when my family, we often, myself and a couple of my cousins, we share very close birthdays. As a matter of fact, we share the exact day with one of my cousins, and we've multiple years made it an effort to all go out and be at Disneyland either on that date or like a weekend right around that time.
Right.
One of those things that we have had a point of doing, and it always brings joy to us to do that at that point. And it's just one of those things. Yes, you can mark your timeline through history, and some of your greatest moments, your most memorable moments, are going to have been made at Disneyland, wherever it might be, Main Street, USA, by the castle, on Jungle Cruise, or whatever. It could be any of those marks and where it was special to you, overcoming fear of an attraction. And that's me personally. My earliest memory of Disneyland is being freaked out by the Haunted Mansion. And now it's like my favorite attraction of the classic attractions. And I think it's partially because I overcame that fear of when
There
I
you
first
go.
went to Disneyland.
Right, right. And again, people just wanna keep perpetuating that with their families, and it's, just generational, as we said. Okay, the next thing that makes it something that is a reason that it's still the happiest place is it provides emotional anchors for everybody, right? You can talk, like you said, nostalgia, but it's also a great escape from the stress in real life. People can go there and just forget their troubles, as they say. You can share special moments with people and have that connection with people. Or just when you're going through tough times, going there just to have a little piece of joy, a little,
Mhm.
whether it be a memory or an encounter with a cast member that's really a positive. Um, Healing after a loss. I know personally, like when my father passed away, I was going to Disney a lot, just to try to get over that and remember the times that he and I were there together.
Well, we also went right after your mother passed as
Right,
well. We were
right,
here in Florida, and we went out there a couple days after.
right.
And tough time for you, but hopefully it brought at least a little bit of light, a
Yeah,
little bit of joy after such a dark time when your mother had just passed.
definitely. And that's why I say like that anchor, that personal anchor. It's also a place for, when you talk about emotional anchors is for to feel accepted,
Mm-hmm.
and I know all of us, some people obviously more than others have struggles with feeling accepted at some point, but at Disneyland you feel accepted. You can Disney bound, or not, or what, or we're just something simple as Minnie ears or Mickey ears, and but not feel judged, just feel like I'm accepted there. And I think that's really, a key element to this wonderful
Well,
place.
I mean, it all plays in the same role of, yes, sometimes we are look, we spend our days adulting all the time, to use a commonly used term over the last several years, adulting, where you're paying bills, you're taking care of the household, you're going to
Right.
work, you're doing the dishes, you're doing all that stuff that's not necessarily fun. Sure, you can make it as fun as you want it to be, but it's not necessarily fun. But getting to Disneyland is that chance to pack all that away, bring back that kid inside you, and that refuel with that nostalgia factor that's
Mhm.
all involved with it, bringing you back to your childhood in many ways. And
Right.
yes, acceptance of the fact that you can go there and be an adult of whatever age. And yes, break out the Mickey ears. Go get an autograph signed by a character or
Right.
whatever, and not feel ridiculous about it.
Hug Pluto.
Yes, and that's amazing, and it's a group feeling, when you're there, that all these people are having this amazing time, feeling very similar ways to you.
Right, exactly. And there's just again, talking about emotional anchors, there's just something very comforting about the things that don't change,
Hmm.
like Sleeping Beauty Castle or the live ragtime piano music being played or the smell of popcorn or treats when you're
Hmm.
walking through. I mean, it's just again, it provides you when you're there that anchor, that emotional anchor that things are okay there.
It brings you right back. Like I said, like I'm talking about, it brings you back to those kids, or anytime during your life when you remember being at Disneyland, and having that happen. That sensory effect of when you walk in, and it just transports you back. And yes, things change. Of course, Disneyland has changed. It's 70 years in. Lots has changed over 70 years, but there still are those little pieces of magic that you remember
Right.
from your various visits in the past, and you can make other memories with new stuff as well.
Right. Like I said, the core of storytelling,
Hmm.
is still there. And so, yes, the films we saw when we were kids are not necessarily the ones that we're watching now. And
Hmm.
so having some new things around can also connect us with what our current life is,
Completely, 100%.
So, in summary, even as the world changes around us, and when it seems like stability of the world is really unraveling these days, Disneyland does offer a beautiful, consistent place where you can breathe, dream, experience joy, and feel safe. And I can say personally, having as a child, first and for many, many years of my life, only gone to Walt Disney World in the Magic Kingdom, I still feel the emotional anchors stronger when I go to
Hmm.
Disneyland. It's to me, it's more palatable, the feelings that are going on and how it makes me feel that escapism and acceptance and things like that. I'm not saying I don't get it at Walt Disney World, but Disneyland, it really just envelops me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you know me, I grew up going to Disneyland, so Disneyland is my place. Like
Mhm.
it is, it's all what it's about. And I would, it's interesting to hear your take on it, your feel on it, because I do love Walt Disney World as well. But Walt Disney World seems so massive and it's just there's just so much of it. Not that you don't have those little areas
Right.
and those little pieces of wonder for sure. You definitely do. But there's something, you brought up quaint earlier. There's something just so homey about Disneyland. And again, it's my home park. I grew up going there. So I feel that way. So it's interesting for you to say that as well, because I do get that vibe from it. And of course, Walt being there, knowing that that was
Right.
sometimes his home. I think that he wanted it to be comfortable for people, just like he wanted to be comfortable for his home. And I think that that does play a part in that.
Definitely, definitely. Now, the other emotional aspect of what makes this park the happiest place on earth is rejuvenation. And when you look up the definition of rejuvenation, it's a restoration of youthful vigor. It's not just okay, I'm rejuvenated. But if you look at the real essence of that, and how is that not a key way that Disneyland makes us feel happy? I mean, it's inspiring to people, right? You go there, talking to different people like people, for example, who are interested in photography and they go there and each time they go, they find something else that is a different perspective of what to photograph, or as children or as adults and you go and you find different things that you find joy in or things that you go back to because they brought you joy. And I think something you touched on a little bit ago too is that they really give you the permission there to as an adult even to play, to be a kid, and that's what Walt said, and it does make you believe in things can be better, and it just is something that I think is essence is also what attracts people from around the world. Yeah, they know of other parks around the world, but I think Disneyland is still one of those sought out places for people who are not, in living in the United States. And even for, like I said, and I believe this is true for a lot of Disney fans, you might find that your closest park isn't Disneyland, but getting to go to Disneyland is something that you want to do, whether you call
Mhm.
it a bucket list or you're just dying to go there, whatever. It is something that we hear about. I mean, our good friends, the Dillos, and Frank, how he had that desire to go check out that park, even though his roots and his where he worked and grew up, it was at Walt Disney World.
Yeah, and I was so happy to hear his words about it because he expressed what we believe, and that it's a magical place and
Right.
that he loves it, and he moved it right up near the top of his list of Disney parks. Even though this was his first visit, he'd never been there before, but now he's like, how can I get back? Also, our friends Keenan and Rachel
Mhm.
went, not that it was a couple years ago
Mhm.
now, and then they got to experience it for the very first time. Again, people who experienced Walt Disney World and then experienced Disneyland and also gushed about how amazing it was and how much they've enjoyed it. It's something transformative about that park. There's just something super special about it. You're talking about rejuvenation a little bit as
Mhm.
well. And, some people will say, look, you go to the parks, you walk around, you're doing 25,000, 30,000 steps in a day. How can you be rejuvenated? And yes, maybe your body isn't necessarily completely rejuvenated, but your mind and your spirit are completely can be rejuvenated
Right.
by visiting Disneyland. Just the joy that it brings you, the joy of seeing the characters, the joy of seeing the castle, the joy of riding your favorite attraction,
Mhm.
the joy of just walking down the middle of Main Street, USA. I mean,
Right.
it's all about that. I mean, it brings so much to you, and it does. it lifts your spirits even when it can be tough times. And we also, we talked about that when
Yes.
how you've had to rebound from losing loved ones,
Mhm.
and that Disney has done that for you, and Disneyland especially high atop that list.
Exactly. So, kinda in summary, for 70 years now, Disneyland has lived in our hearts, not just because of what it is, but because of what it allows us to feel: wonder, joy, and belonging, you know? And I think too that it's just something really impressive, powerful, that the original park, the one that Walt walked in, is still inspiring guests 70 years later. It's just, mind-boggling to me.
It
Excuse me.
is. It's pretty incredible to think about. 70 years. 70 years of this park,
Yeah.
and something that people thought would never going to happen. And even if it did, it was going to fail miserably. And here it is, 70 years in, and still just, we just talked about it, tickling new visitors
Right.
and visitors who've been there multiple times. Completely. It's still amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyways, I think at this point, maybe it's time that we kind of share with people some of our personal reflections and of Disneyland. I know we've been giving some things out already, but just curious, from the OG attractions that were at Disneyland on the day it opened, what was your favorite, or what is your favorite?
That's interesting. I think a lot of mine more were developed in the '60s, more kind
Hmm.
of, after the World's Fair. Some of those were in the periods after
Hmm.
that, things, of course, like It's a Small World, like Pirates, like
Right.
Haunted Mansion. But for the original classics, I still love going on the Jungle Cruise. I
Hmm.
mean, it's still a l- I know it's evolved from what it originally was thought to be when Walt first did the Jungle Cruise. Now
Right.
it's more tongue in cheek, humor, fun, dad jokes abound. It wasn't that to begin with, but still, it was an amazing, interesting ride, just as it was to begin with. And then it's evolved into this spectacular bit of fun now. As much as I will not wait for it many times, Peter Pan's flight is still amazing. It's still incredible to fly over London.
Right.
It still is. That's the reason why the wait is so long, is because for a simple dark ride, it's still to this day is magical. That's
Right.
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and that's mine. My favorite of the OG attractions is Peter Pan's flight. Really, like you said, I feel like this was definitely showing Walt's essence of storytelling, of magic, and the whole concept that you can fly, and it's just it is amazing to me. Like you said, it's still fun, and I agree with you. A lot of times we don't want to take the extra time to wait in the queue. But when we have the opportunity to go like early entry and things like that, that's one that we always want to
Mhm.
capture because it is something that still holds great fun.
Yeah, completely. And there are many of those there. I'm curious for you, as somebody who went to Walt Disney
Hmm.
World growing up more than I didn't go until I was much into my adult years, actually, to
Yeah.
Walt Disney World. But like, what are those places that are different than Walt Disney World that you really, really love about Disneyland? What are they? The spots, the
Mm,
attractions? I
good
mean, I know there
question.
are a lot of similarities, but there are also a lot of differences.
Mm.
I'm catching you completely
You
off guard here,
are,
but
yes.
I'm curious what you think.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that some of those spaces have to do with attractions and how they're laid out differently. For example, It's a Small World, just especially at nighttime, going there and seeing it all lit up is a different experience, and it's just a warm experience. I mean, especially since It's a Small World is one of my favorite attractions. When I think of my childhood, that was the first attraction I went on at Walt Disney World. So I think that's pretty cool. I think also just the fact that how things blend so nicely in between, and I think I like that. I mean, we were fortunate enough to take a tour one time that kinda highlighted it, and I liked still going through the park and seeing those transition spaces and how really neat that is, and how the thought process was very successful at bringing different lands together, but just seamlessly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
What about
it's
you?
well, I mean, it's easy for me. I grew up there, so I love much of Disneyland. Sorry, Walt Disney World fans, a little more than Walt Disney World, and especially some of the attractions. There are attractions that are better at Walt Disney World than Disneyland, but I don't find a lot of personally, just for me, because there's the
Right.
nostalgia factor. It's what I grew up with more than anything else. Um, I will admit Cinderella Castle is more
Grand.
grand
Mhm.
than Sleeping Beauty Castle, but there's just something so cute about Sleeping Beauty Castle, and people want to make jokes about it and Tiny Castle and this and that or whatever. It is so wonderful, and it has a real working drawbridge, ladies and gentlemen.
It's true.
Cinderella Castle does not have that at Walt Disney World. Um, it's just so wonderfully cool and amazing, and I love the fact that everything is compact, and people
Mhm.
will complain about how compact it is at some points, that maybe things are too tight, but I find that that's the functionality of it,
Right.
that you can get through these areas, but yes, they do flow seamlessly,
Right.
in so many ways. Even something like Galaxy's Edge, when people put that, they're like, you cannot put that in that has to go in Disney's Hollywood, or into California Adventure Park. That cannot go in Disneyland because it doesn't fit any of the theming there. But then you go there and you go through the transitions
Yes.
from Big Thunder, or from what is now was it Bayou
Mhm.
country, or even actually from kind of where Fantasyland is, and the transition in, and it just does flow like you were talking
Yeah.
about, seamlessly into this other world, that you almost forget
Right.
that you are still in Disneyland when
Well,
you get there.
yeah, I was gonna say, one, like you're saying, the transition in there is pretty neat, but there's almost every time that I would leave Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland and go back and realize, "Wait, oh, yeah, I'm at Disneyland still." It was always kind of funny to me. I'll share that the very first time I went to Disneyland, I went with a friend at work, and it was like one of my first jobs, whatever. Um, and I'll admit, I really didn't research a lot about it. I knew there were attractions that were the same as Magic Kingdom, so I thought, okay, yeah, I know the attractions. I know Small World and Haunted Mansion and things like that. And but without doing that research, I have to admit, when I first walked in, of course, it was different then. It's expanded since that first visit, but I was disappointed, and I thought, oh wow, I didn't expect to be. And so then I went home and I did research, and then really got to learn the whole story. Got to learn what Walt, and I'm not saying every detail, but really got to appreciate more how it got there and why it is the way it is, and how amazing that is actually. And so the second time I went, I actually went alone, and I loved it. I just loved it, and I thought, wow, this is what people are talking about. And
Yeah.
I think that's why I find it important a lot of times on our podcast to really emphasize and share with people who have never been to Disneyland, to really understand what to appreciate about it,
Mhm.
or why to appreciate it, I
Right.
should say.
I like the people, like, even when we were talking about Frank Gillo,
Mhm.
and Keenan and Rachel. They reached out to us, and some other people that are Disneyland
Mhm.
stands, that go to Disneyland quite often, or have at least experienced it in their past, to kind of find out exactly what is, what to expect, what's the best places to go to,
Right.
how to appreciate it, and that's good, and
Yeah.
that's what you should do too if you've never been to Disneyland. Yeah, find out more. Again, Michelle mentioned an episode earlier. Find out. You can always ask us, but
Right.
yeah, find out from people that know.
Right.
Otherwise, so you're not, if you're a Walt Disney World fan, taking a little bit of backboard, but I think you're going to end up really enjoying it. It is the mecca. It's the mecca
Right.
for Disney.
You
That's
know.
for sure.
And just getting to, I think expectations,
Mhm.
to first of all, the main thing is when you go in, don't expect the grand Cinderella's castle that you see at Magic Kingdom, but see this amazing place, and it could only be that tall because that were the regulations at that time, but that it was just really special. Like you said, it has a working drawbridge. I
Yes.
mean, it has gold leaf on it, and it's just something that's unique.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. The more you see it, the more you fall in love with the cute little castle
yeah.
at Disneyland, for sure. And you know, I want to say this real quickly because you may be hearing some noises in the background, or for those of you on YouTube watching this, you may see somebody passing by. Just wanted to explain. We have a thunderstorm outside. We've got a nervous Scott in the house. So if you hear some doors shutting, some noises around, he's just checking things out to make sure things are
Yeah,
cool while
he's
we're
kinda
recording this
pacing.
show. Yes, yes, yes.
That's how he manages that
That's how he
stress.
manages. Yep.
Yes, yeah.
And, we were here to hopefully try and like give it a little diversion by doing
Right,
this show. So hopefully
exactly.
that's working as well. But
Right.
yeah. So anything else you want to discuss here?
Um, in terms of personal, experiences, no, I think I've shared them all. I mean, like I said, I still, love Disneyland. Yes, Magic Kingdom, it was the first park that I went to, but there is just something personal to me that makes Disneyland so special, and, I I can't wait to go again. I know we have a trip coming up, and I'm so excited,
Yeah,
you know?
I can't wait. Already looking at things, and it's still 6 months away.
Right,
Looking at things and trying to figure it all out. But I just couldn't be more excited to get back to my home park.
right.
Very excited about that. So here's the thing for me about Disneyland. Look, Walt Disney World is great. Walt did walk the grounds before they were built at Walt Disney World at Magic Kingdom. However, he was never there after it was
Mhm,
built. The only attraction you can go on that Walt actually took part in, it was a part of and rode on, is Carousel of Progress. So
mhm.
please do that while you're
Right,
there. However, Disneyland is Walt's footsteps, his fingerprints all over it, legitimately. All these attractions he was on, part of developing you just think of all the classic
mhm,
attractions. He was there, he rode on all those classic attractions that
right.
still exist. Of course, cars have been changed out or whatever. He was there. His apartment is still there with the light on
I
for him.
know. Gets
Take
me
a
every time.
moment
Yeah.
and look up at that and remember that this is the guy who created this in all these theme parks: Universal, SeaWorld, Six Flags, Dollywood. Think about your favorite theme parks. It was Walt and his crazy idea to create them, and
Right.
it was right there in Anaheim, in an orange grove in Anaheim, when he created this park in Disneyland, and it's all there for you. It's all there. Go, walk in his footsteps. If you're there long enough, take a tour and learn more about Walt's influence on this park and the things he'd
Yes.
had to do to get there. It is worth your time. It's something special. That's why I call it
Yeah.
the mecca for Disney fans,
Right, right.
because it's something as a Disney fan you have to experience at some point in your lifetime.
Yeah. Right, right, because it does hold some really special elements to it
Mhm.
that aren't just saying attractions or food or whatever. I mean, those, yes, all make a part of it, but
All great.
there's just something more, to it than that.
Yeah,
So,
for
yeah.
sure. For
All
sure.
right. So I guess to recap, one of the key things that I think that we've discussed about why this is still the happiest place on earth is because of the emotional threads that it makes.
I don't know if you heard any emotion in our voices here, but yeah.
I know from time to time, and like I mentioned, and I mentioned at the beginning, we didn't get into specifics about attractions or shows or foods or why that it makes it the happiest place on earth. It's because what Disneyland provides continues to offer is more than just those things, because those things can change. The attractions change, the food, the shows, but it still offers to us something more, like we said, the emotional part of it. And it's amazing to think that somebody had that notion so long ago. I mean, that what Walt was, describing and what he was experiencing was, places that weren't necessarily feeling clean, and people weren't necessarily who worked there friendly, and all those are those things that are helping build those emotions for
Right. I
us.
mean, it was about, there were carnivals or,
Mhm.
places like that where you could go on simple attractions or even roller coasters or whatever. And there were more kiddie zones, I mean,
Mhm.
so it was kind of more of adult attractions. Or this was the place to meld them both together where everybody as a family could have a
Right.
great time and make those core memories. And that's what makes Disneyland's all Disney parks special, but Disneyland was the first to do this and do it successfully and is still doing it 70 years in.
Like I said, there were, he saw, like you said, places that had things that were mainly for kids and just weren't pleasant to be at,
Mhm.
or and so it's wonderful that, like we've just said over and over, that he's created this, and how much it touches everybody's heart.
It touches my heart deeply,
Mhm.
deeply. You know me again. I'm so glad that I was able to expose you more to it
Mhm.
over time
Right.
because yes, you did have a rough outing your first time to Disneyland, but when I got you to trek out and live with me out in Southern California, and we started making regular
Mhm.
trips to Disneyland, and you could see what was special about it.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And now, like you said, it's very special to you,
Yeah.
and it's definitely very special to me. So, as we wrap up, we're going to wrap up this tribute now. 70 years of Disneyland. Um, I just need to say this because you've heard it in my voice already, talking about Walt. Thank you, Walt. Thank you. Thank you for creating this place. Thank you for dreaming of a place where kids, grown-ups, all of us, like-minded people could play together. Fantasy, memory, nostalgia, all hand in hand, and where there's magic everywhere, just around every corner. It is such a special place.
Yeah, and, again, 70 years later, Walt's dream is still very much alive. It's in the sparkle of a kid's first visit, or, just a a smile that you experience after maybe not being there for a while. It's the experience with the cast members that make you feel good, or the stories we continue to pass down from generation to generation. Um, Disneyland isn't just the happiest place on earth because of what it has, but because of what it gives.
Mhm.
Joy, connection, comfort, and a little bit of hope when we need it the most.
Yeah. Oh, yes. When we need it the most.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter. Look, you could be planning your first visit to Disneyland. You could have been there 100, 1,000 times. It doesn't matter when you're walking through there the next time. You're dreaming, know that the magic is there. Know that Walt is there. The magic is always surrounding
Mhm.
you. And we just, again, I said it already. I'm going to say it again. Thank you, Walt. Thank you. Thank you for creating this little piece of magic that has touched so many hearts over the years. Happy anniversary to Disneyland. Here's to the memories that we've had, and here to the many that are still to come. I love Disneyland. I love Disneyland. And as Walt said so profoundly on that opening day, July 17th, 1955.
Disneyland is your land. Here age relives fond memories of the past, and here youth may savor the challenge and promise of the future.